let's just go from here, which is you just said, is it the real Stops? And you said yes, 10 years, and they all started to laugh.
I can tell you everything you said. No, I have to do it. Holland and what I have repeated, and that should be evidence enough. Imran, I've killed his entire LDM, his GDM, his everything.
That's it. That's Stopspamming.
Guys, what are you doing? You're putting people to sleep. You are doing what you are doing every day, and that is selling your dawah. We know this stuff. The question is atheism, I mean, what a stupid word, what a misnomer. Is it rational? That is the question. And it doesn't help what Hijab is doing, his usual thing with his shifting the goalposts and then throwing out some words that hopefully nobody understands. That is not the way to do things. Hamza, you've been on the Magic Sandwich show. You've seen how people do this and how not to do this, and you're doing exactly how not to do this. Come on, guys. You should have been on the Gin and Tonic show a couple of times and seen how you go and handle people, how you let them speak if the topic is the other person and not you. Okay. Hijab has done a wonderful job of defining rational, and it's about, clear thought. It's about reasoning. It's about logical, sensible. And if you go irrational, it's even better, because then it's deprived of normal, and I'm reading this off there, deprived of normal mental clarity or sound judgment, not in accordance with reason, utterly illogical, not endowed with the faculty of reason. Now, excuse me, if somebody gives me a closed box, I have no idea what's in it, and he says, in here is a fire-spitting dragon, is it irrational to go and say, excuse me, do you have any reason why I should believe that?
Let me just stop for 1 second. I think one of the things that Stops could have done as well, because this is for everybody, and it's easy to look at it afterwards, right? Is define what it is to be irrational. And I think if you go and watch the whole of this, you'll see that somebody came in a lot earlier. I'm not sure if Stops was on at that point or was listening, but there was a guy called Ask Yourself. And to me, and I agree with this, right? They would need to show that there is a contradiction for something to be irrational. It's not just that it's unreasonable from their point of view. If they're going to claim that atheism, quote unquote, is irrational, they need to show a contradiction. In other words, there's something within atheism, and again, they'd have to define what atheism is, which is simply the disbelief or the lack of belief, depending on which atheist you speak to, of God. Now, there's some implications to that, which is obviously either you obviously believe in a non-God world, but there's a wide range of varieties of, quote, non-God worlds. Now, the most common is naturalism, but you have idealism, dualism, monism. So there's quite a wide variety, and you'd have to ask the particular atheist you're speaking to, what is it you believe? And they haven't done this. They haven't defined it, and Stops is kind of defining irrationality here, or rationality and its converse. But I think it's, for them, it's a case of, and I did sort of type this to Stops at one point, is get them to define what irrationality is and why they think atheism is irrational. And if you put in the clause that, hey, it needs to have a contradiction for it to be irrational, now the burden is on them, which I think it is, because they're asking the question, is it irrational? And you don't normally ask your own worldview, is my worldview irrational? You take it to be rational until somebody shows it's irrational. Now, you could be believing it for bad reasons, and if somebody shows that to you, then you could say, okay, hey, you know what, that's I started to believe this for bad reasons. But I do
think, I do this later.
Yeah, so I do think that getting the definitions down in the beginning and asking them, what do you mean by irrationality, I think is important. But Stops is doing it in the sense of doing the dictionary at the moment.
Do you have any evidence to back up your claim? How is that irrational? It is totally and only rational. It is the only response that you should have if somebody gives you an empty box with a humongous claim, that you then ask, what is going on here? Okay, let's have a discussion. Excellent. This is what we want. Yep, Hijab, come on, go.
Just a quick thing, Hamza, why don't you respond to the rationality thing about Hijab?
This is a pity because he's interrupting the flow, because we're just starting to get into it, and now would have been a good moment to continue this, but the whole you know, every sort of, it's like the takeoff run, and you've just reached the end of the runway. You're just about to take off, lift the nose, and he says, whoa, 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 hit the brakes, stop, abort takeoff. Because now we want to discuss something else. And that was so unfair, I thought.
I think the other thing that I've pointed out is I think there were too many people on the panel here as well. I think having less people on is a better idea, because then you can have that backwards and forwards and it doesn't feel like people are being left out. I think there were too many Muslims on and not enough people challenging them, so that you can have this back and forth. But at least you got a few minutes back and forth, whereas before this, and that's what I wanted to say, and I'm reminding myself now, if you go watch this whole video, right, before Stop Spamming came on, there was very little backwards and forwards. It's almost like they took a question or a statement, and then each of them, because Subboor was the moderator, so he didn't actually input himself. He got Imran, Tzortzis, and Hijab to respond. So there were 4 of them, with one moderator being Subboor, and the other 3 were doing the thing. Oftentimes, the person that came on wasn't given the opportunity to rebut that sort of stuff. So it looked like somebody had given a question or made a statement, and the Muslims had rebutted it, and that was the final say. And of course, that isn't the case. And I think you need more of an interaction so that somebody can respond and there's a backwards and forwards.
And that was my reaction. That's why I said, oh, excellent. Let's have a conversation. Exactly.
All right, let's carry on.
If I let Hijab address Stop Spamming, that's a false analogy, yeah?
Yes, okay.
And therefore it's illogical.
This is the interesting part. You need to listen to this carefully, because remember what I said. If somebody comes to you with a box, I did not mention Muslim, I did not mention Allah, I did not mention Islam. I just said if somebody comes to you with a closed box.
Logical, because you can't make it the same as God's existence, right? Because what we're saying is that there is a divine entity and all the signs are there, self-evident and explicit signs are there for an entity to be behind the box. For example, if someone knocks on the door, you're not going to say it's irrational to claim there's no one behind the door.
Okay, so like a couple of things here. I think one is your point was not, as I understand it, that the thing in the box created everything. But I think, if I understand, the part of the analogy that you're making is there's something in the box for which we don't know what it is, if it even exists. And that's the part that you are saying. And he's, to my ear at least, misunderstanding that and suggesting that, no, it's not the same, because this creator has got all these signs and whatever's in the box hasn't got those signs. Well, you never got to that point, and you could have said, well, that thing in the box actually created everything, including the box that it's in. It's not incoherent to say that. You could have had a divine dragon in the box, right? But you didn't add that specific point in. And so,
well, I add this later, but I didn't want to load this in the beginning.
Yeah.
You see, this is the thing, and he's already now making, and look at the body language. Okay, he's on the defensive because he thinks now that I am attacking his God, where he thinks he needs to go into apologetic mode. He needs to go now and defend his God because his God is too weak, can't do it. So he has to go, well, all the signs are there, all the indications are there, which they are not. So he's just sitting there saying, whoa, 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 please don't hurt my God.
Okay, yeah, and I think that's a different argument, right? That the fact that there are signs there, that's the claim that Muslims are making, and they need to justify that. How do they know that? Because the only way they could get that information is from the Quran. So the Quran is a set of claims by which they are then looking out in the world to try and verify or if they were honest, falsify as well. But that's a separate point, right? I think the one thing that I got from this was that you are saying that there's something there for which we don't know whether it is in fact there. They're going, no, it is there, but that part is a separate argument entirely. But then he gets to this point here, which is this, and it's irony, right, that he says that you're doing a false analogy. He now just said that if somebody comes to the door, let's just hear the last part here.
What you're saying is there's a box, we have...
Let me just go back just for a few seconds here, because let me just see if we get this bit.
Self-evident and explicit signs are there for an entity to be behind the box. For example, if someone knocks on the door, you're not going to say it's irrational to claim there's no one behind the door.
Okay, so that's a false analogy. Why is that a false analogy? Because we know humans exist. We've seen them before. Exactly. It's not even that you need evidence that humans were there. If you came to this planet and you didn't know anything about what evidence was for human beings existing, and you physically saw one, and then one knocked on the door and you opened it, or the person said, hey, I'm a human, and you'd heard that humans had spoken, and you'd seen them, then of course that's entirely rational. That's a mundane claim. The claim that's been made here is that it's a supernatural, or it's an extraordinary claim, and so that is a false analogy to say that you wouldn't say it's human. So I think it's ironic that he's saying that you're making a false analogy, which may or may not be the case because he added extra things on. But then to make a false analogy himself with a human, I think that's mistaken. All right, let's carry on from there.
What you're saying is there's a box, we have no other indication, and therefore we're going to say there isn't a fire-spitting dragon. But that's a false analogy, because
That's not
what we're saying here is it's more analogous.
This is, again, he doesn't understand it. Now, I always thought I should give Hamza credit for a little bit more, but here he's being stupid. The thing is that if I say this is not a red table, I'm not saying it's green. And this is exactly what he's saying. I am not making a claim. I'm just saying I do not know what is in this box. And that is why I'm saying, give me your evidence if there really is what you claim it is. I'm not saying it's not this, it's something else. I don't know why he is doing this. He should know better. He should know, because he has looked at philosophy and psychology. I know that. So he should know a lot better to say this stupid thing. I mean, this is really dumb.
I guess to someone knocking on the door, giving you their name and saying it's me, it's John, and their ID, right? Which is revelation, which is all the philosophical arguments. So it's a bit of a false analogy, which I'll let
stop again.
unpack.
Sorry, Rob, but this is exactly the point that I'm trying to make. I mean, he's I don't know why he's doing this. Really, he must have been on an off day. This is exactly what I'm saying. If I'm saying that there's a knock at the door, and I'm saying, well, who's there? And it says, well, I'm the Holy Ghost. And I'm saying, well, excuse me, you'll have to do better than that. If it then says, no, actually, I'm John, and here's my ID and anything, you are providing evidence. That's exactly my point. If somebody is there and providing evidence, then it is irrational to believe something else.
Yeah, well, like I say, I think this is a false analogy between a mundane claim and an extraordinary claim, and then making them the same. Obviously, in his worldview, the evidence is just as compelling as seeing a human being physically, or hearing a human being behind the door. The evidence for their particular God is of the same level in his mind. I obviously think I don't believe that.
But the Tom Jump question about the way you define rationality, defining rationality is actually not the problem here. The problem here is, can atheism, if you're the type of atheist that, for example, would adopt the Darwinian mechanism to explain your rational faculties, or even if you're atheists, can that explain our rational faculties? That's what we're saying.
No, you're not.
Saying define what's rational.
That's not the question. That is not the question. If this would have been the question, the answer would have been different, but you did not ask this question.
What did he ask? What are you referring to?
He just said, does the Darwinian mechanism give you any kind of indication that it's rational to be an atheist?
Yeah, I would point to something like evolutionary reliabilism, right? We have reliable faculties. We're not claiming that we have infallible faculties. The argument against that, which is kind of what he's pointing to, and somebody earlier on, and I think T-Jump did it as well, but somebody earlier on, he's kind of taking, but not really understanding, Alvin Plantinga's argument against naturalism. The ANN, it's ENNA, the evolutionary argument against naturalism, right? And this has got significant rebuttals in the philosophical literature, significant, right? Even to the point where Plantinga acknowledges that if you don't sort of start with certain presuppositions, the argument is kind of weak. So it's not a particularly strong one, and I don't think that that Hamza fully understands it anyway. But I would point to evolutionary reliabilism as one mechanism that can explain this through the Darwinian mechanism. And again, we'd have to go into a deeper discussion on that. I'd have to go and look into the philosophical literature. But I think T-Jump was talking about just from the philosophical point of view, but they are trying to ask it from the Darwinian point of view, because they understand that you can make the argument from a philosophical point of view. So they're not trying to challenge that. I hope they at least
But this was not the question. This is my point. If they want to go there, We can go there, but then they need to ask a different question. They cannot ask, is atheism rational? If all they want to know is atheism rational. If they want to know whether the Darwinian mechanism gives you any kind of footing to make that claim, then it's a different question.
You could define it how you want. The English dictionary, a philosophical dictionary, to be honest, I don't give the monkeys. The point is, if you adopt philosophical naturalism as your philosophical worldview, or even atheism in the kind of popular sense that you adopt the Darwinian mechanism to explain your rational faculties, can those things, those ideas, those postulations, can they explain our rational faculties? My argument is no. And when you study the philosophy, and when you study the philosophy of biology and even the science itself and the empirical data, you have to say, we're going to be skeptical. So as Imran said in the beginning, we have this intuitive idea that yes, we are rational creatures, and we can justify the fact that we believe and we know that we're rational creatures. But under philosophical naturalism or under the Darwinian mechanism, we can't do that. In my view, it would have to lead you to the idea that you'll have to be a classical skeptic.
Hamza, you know me well enough to know that this is exactly. Yeah.
There's something else, or
no? Because he's just diverting now. He's going off into philosophical naturalism, which is something that I don't subscribe to anyway. So what is the point? We're not discussing this. Why divert everything now? Why deflect from the original idea? The thing is that, I mean, Islam is really weak. Okay, it's really easy to refute. So they are desperate to get this going into some way. And this is what Rob is always saying, that they are so desperate that they are using Christian apologetics to try and score some brownie points. And it fails every single fucking time. Because exactly what you need to do, you just need to read up a little bit about this and then you get it, and that's end of story. And you refute him. And this is why I have refuted Hamza every single time he has come up with any kind of argument. Because all I need to do is look at his claim, look at the literature, find the facts, refute it. That's how easy it is. But he still does it again and again.
Yeah, on this particular point, there's a lot of philosophical literature. I haven't read all of it, but there's significant rebuttals to this. So it's a case of just reading this up. This is simply not the case, Abdullah.
Yeah.
They can explain rationalism. There's plenty of philosophical literature on it. I would.
He's right.
Invite you to.
Darwinian. What is Darwinian? Faculties can't explain rationalism. You mean, what the hell is this idiot talking about?
I mean, I think that there's a lot of philosophical literature that says that they can. So this is just Hamza's claim. And Abdullah, if you want to present arguments apart from that, and we can show you rebuttals against this. So it's nowhere near as strong as this, and I would suggest. And we have somebody, Detective Inspector Monkfish, who's done a lot more on this than both myself and Stops, and he would point you to the literature as well. And we can get that information. It's not difficult to get hold of. This is not really a significant argument that most people, especially not Christians, push anymore either. There's significant rebuttals to this, right? There's much stronger arguments that they want to bring. This is not one of them. So Hamza is kind of a little bit behind the curve in terms of where the Christians are. They're sort of trying to play catch up, but it's difficult if you don't really understand the argument in its entirety, or indeed the rebuttals to it, and so you sort of get left behind. But let's move on, shall we?
Is not going to fly, because what you're suddenly doing is you're attaching a rucksack and packing millions of things into that rucksack. We're talking about an atheist. An atheist just, I am a person without a God belief. I don't give a continental flying whatever for evolution or Darwin, or I don't care. It does not influence whether or not I believe a God exists. So just leave it. So all I'm saying, it is very rational to ask a question without attributing, because what you are doing now is you are attributing a whole lot of things to this dragon. You are saying this dragon created the world and he is now coming to you. You need to hatch all eggs and you're only allowed to wear green. No, there is no attachment yet. You only have a box.
No, that's
you might see this different. I don't.
Yeah, you can't start that way, because what you're doing is what you accuse theists of doing, which is misrepresenting your position, because we don't believe it's just a box, and we're just making a claim there's something in the box. It's
not about you. It's about me.
That's what we call a straw man.
No,
So
it's
instead of
not.
putting stop spamming, stop Stopspamming. Yeah. The point is, we don't believe in just the bots. Yeah.
I am not discussing a Muslim. I'm not discussing a theist. I am discussing me, a person without a God belief.
Okay.
I do not attribute anything to this dragon. I'm not saying that the God claim is automatically, it comes complete as a package with the universe and with all the other claims. No, there are 50 million different, well, not quite, 3,000 different gods with all different features, different attributes and everything.
Well,
I cannot go and say, no, they all do the same thing.
I think you should listen to that. Therefore, you're probably in a position now to like, okay, give me some evidence for the divine. That's basically what you're trying to say. And I think
Of course, that is rational.
Brilliant.
No,
you should now listen to Hijab.
Sorry, were you saying something, or was it you on the video?
Saying, no. I'm biting my chair here. I'm not even going to the divine. He doesn't understand that even if I keep it general, any kind of claim must be questioned. And I'm not even going to gods because there's so many. I'm not even going to his particular favorite God. I'm just keeping it very general. Is atheism rational? That's all. I'm not talking about the Muslim God. I'm only
there was
talking about the claim.
Yeah, I think though there might have been that you guys were talking past each other a little bit, because they were making the claim that you cannot trust your rational faculties because of the Darwinian mechanism. Doesn't, in their view, give you truth-bearing faculties, and of course, like I say, evolutionary reliabilism and other rebuttals are quite significant against this view. So I don't think this is a particularly strong argument, and neither do most philosophers. Or anybody else that's studied this. And maybe we should get Detective Inspector Monkfish, if he's available, to come on and do a segment on the show, because he's done this far more in depth. He's sent me quite a bit of information. I've not had a chance to look at all of it.
But he doesn't like presenting.
No, but I mean, he could read it off, or we could do it separately, or do it quietly, or whatever the case is. But I think there's kind of, you're talking past each other a little bit here. You want to talk about, is it rational? He's going, hang on a moment. You can't even be talking about rational, because you've got to give us a reason for why you think as an atheist you are rational. And you're going, hang on a moment. I'm talking about whether, the belief in the box is rational. So I think there's kind of a little bit of, you're not quite talking to each other as much as you could have been.
Okay, but now to avoid this in future, how do you do this? If the question is atheism rational? Okay, what I'm understanding now, what I should have done in the beginning is say, okay, define atheism, define rational. What is it that you're actually asking, and why are you asking the question? What kind of answer are you expecting? Maybe that would have been a good approach as well.
Yeah, like I say, earlier on in the video, earlier on in the panel, somebody else asked, what do you define as irrational? And Hamza, if you go watch the video much earlier on before you came on, he said that it would be irrational to deny something that is either self-evident or is demonstrably the case, or words to that effect. I don't want to misrepresent, words to that effect, right?
Right.
And no, that wouldn't be irrational. That would be unreasonable. To be irrational, you would have to show that there's a contradiction. Somebody not believing something that they don't believe is true, you believe it's true, and you think there's good reasons and they don't, doesn't mean they're irrational. It just means that you could argue they're unreasonable, but that's a much softer claim than one that says that they're irrational, because there you need to demonstrate some sort of contradiction.
Okay. And I didn't catch that because, remember, I was frantically swapping accounts in the background.
All right, let's move on.
Give you a brilliant summary of the contingency argument. Is it all right?
No, I've already destroyed that. That doesn't work with me. I've already done that.
Yeah. Maybe listen. Stand in the possibility that you could be wrong, and stand in the possibility that Hijab could articulate the contingency argument in a powerful way.
Look, if you want to talk about details, come on the Gin and Tonic and we can talk about the details. But today, here and now, it is only about, is atheism rational? It is not about, is contingency argument stupid or not, or dishonest or circular, or just another version of the infinite regression. This is not the question. The question is atheism rational? And I have just made the point that absolutely, yes, it is. Can anybody refute me? No.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How do you define rationality?
How do I define rationality?
So, Rob, just pause quickly. Stop, please. This is
I mean, he's sitting there and he's thinking all the time, okay, how can I catch this? How can I catch this? How can I catch this? And now he thinks he's got an angle where he can use the same thing that he always does, which I have already told him that he does, but he cannot help himself. He cannot find anything else. There's no way that he can argue. There is nothing that he can say. There's nothing that he can refute. So he has to go and do exactly what I told him earlier on that he will do, and that is now go to semantics and go, how do you define rational, which I've just done. So I don't know why they have him on the panel. Really, I don't understand what he's doing there.
Yeah, when I listen to this, now you guys go off on the long grass here, and I don't think Hijab actually helped in this panel at all. You know, if it had stuck with Tzortzis or Imran, for example, that probably would have been better. I think Hijab was unnecessary here and superfluous. And now you go into a long spiel. We'll deal with it to the best of our ability, but now it's it diverts off here.
We can instead of because the rest is stupid. Because this is just now his clown act. There's nothing useful in this. It's just.
Well, let's go through it anyway, because I think we can point out where.
Well, one thing that people need to listen to here, because this I think is the important part. The thing is, he cannot defend Islam. He cannot defend anything. He can't refute my refutations. So what he does is he tries to turn it around. He tries to now get atheists to where Muslims are, which is, that we are faith-based, that we are this. So he's trying to make atheists look bad as a group, as a concept. And he says this is your worldview, which is ridiculous. But this is what he's trying to do. So listen to what he does now, how he is trying to twist my claim that it is rational, where I have provided evidence, where I've shown why, where the irrational, the opposite, would make no sense, where I've already done all this. Listen now how he tries to turn this around to make mine a claim that I need to now provide evidence for. Do you want me to repeat what I just said?
Yeah, not only repeat it, but get it from a source.
I've just taken different dictionaries and they all say that it's an adjective. It's
rational.
Adjective based on clear thought and reason, logical or sensible, of sound mind, sane.
So how do you define reason?
I don't define reason. I don't know what reason. Reason is a way. Is a way of thinking. Is a line that I am following in a thinking process.
Sorry.
Should I repeat everything?
No, I'm just asking. Is this are you reading this from a dictionary? Yeah.
No, I just said I copied a couple of words from a dictionary to know what I'm talking about.
He has a script.
No, but when you look at it, when you look at the dictionary definitions, they're a little bit out of line, and especially even the encyclopedic definitions, they're a little bit out of line of what you're saying. So let's get that cleared up first, because reason is that which usually, has explanatory power, is justification.
No, that's nonsense. Stop this, please. Come on, get out of this.
Okay, no problem. It's nonsense. Yeah?
Rob, just wait.
It's not about.
Can you see the background now? What Subboor did, he did not completely mute his microphone. He is getting a call from someone who is saying, "Who the fuck is this on the panel at the moment?" And I could hear him through the microphone saying, "This is Stopspamming," and explaining who I am. And this is why he is looking quite embarrassed, because he thinks somebody is telling him, "Listen, do something. This is not helping get him off the panel." Because he's explaining to him who I am. The other funny thing is that Imran Hussein thinks that I have a script, because I don't know why they think that everything that is scripted is provided by the Mossad or something like this. This is why he's saying, "Yeah, you see, he's on a script." How the hell can I be on a script if I don't know what is going on? I'm not doing anything. All I've done is I've written down, I think, 10 words, which is rational and irrational. That's all I've done, just so that I know what irrational actually is and what irrational is. That's all I've done. That's it.
Okay.
It's not about logical inference, no?
It is about, is atheism rational? We are not discussing reason. We are not discussing any kind of explanatory power. There is no explanatory power. If I ask a question, is it rational to believe God exists?
If you don't mind, just to come back on what you said it's not about reason, but right? If you look in the dictionary, the word rationality is that which pertains to reason.
No, it doesn't. It's
So
not.
you can't talk about rationality without talking about reason. Are you with
I
me?
can do that without having to go now and discuss reason. The thing is,
No, we have
you
to
are
know what reason
deflecting.
is.
I don't want to
Because
deflect.
if rationality is all about it's pertaining to reason,
It's
so we
not.
need to know what reason is to see. Okay, when we say reason, does atheism fit the category or not? So when we say when we look at, like, for example, let me just give you some sources, right? Since you haven't provided any.
No,
If you look at, for
I don't.
example,
Hijab, I'm not going to go there. Listen to what
why
I
not?
say once again, and please don't misrepresent me. Hamza has just said this is something that I don't like.
I'm not saying anything
What
about what
I
you said.
said is based on clear thought and reason,
Yeah, but
logical
that's not the
or
dictionary
sensible,
definition.
of sound mind, sane. All right, I've given
Yeah,
you
where'd you
several
get that
things, not
definition
just
from?
reason.
Where'd you get the definition from?
These are different dictionaries.
Like, where does it say clear thought?
It doesn't.
I'm just not sure
Okay,
the point of this.
the
This
thing
is
is,
kind of like red herring. This is laboring a point that is really trivial, right? So rationality is the ability to have inferences from the laws of logic, and reason is putting that into practice, right? The mind is using rationality, and its foundation is the laws of logic. I think, you know, that you all agree that you have it. So this was, to me, like you went off in the long grass. He can challenge your basis for rationality, that he can do, right? But to go into this seemingly, to me, trivial points about what is reason and rationality, since you both are using it, unless you were using it incorrectly, you could say, okay, stop spamming, you're using it incorrectly, here's what it really is. But if you both agree that you're using it, and really his claim is that you don't have a good reason to be using it, or you can't justify the use of it, that's separate. But this was just off in the long grass.
I agree totally. Yeah, exactly. Do you want me now to find where I found this, the dictionary name of where I found this?
Yeah. For example, yeah, exactly. If I say to you, look, if you look at the Cambridge Dictionary,
No, I don't have time for that now.
No,
I
okay,
just went to different dictionaries and I just copy pasted some words in here to know what I'm talking about.
Like you're getting it a little bit, with all due respect.
I think the one thing, Stops, you could have done here definitely is ask him what's the point of this, which you might have done, or you will do. But I think jumping in here again, it's easy for us to do it afterwards, right? Everybody can be an armchair expert, but in the heat of the moment, it's not always so easy, as those of us who have engaged in discussions know. But I think one thing is we can always like improve our skills. Even you with many years experience, there's always something we can do even better. Let's put it that way. And I think here would have been the opportunity to go, okay, do we agree on what reason and rationality is? Do you agree that we're both using it? Great. Okay. So do you think that I'm using it incorrectly? And if so, why? What's your source for that? And then let's move on, because this is not helping us in any way. And to me, and I've spoken a lot to Hijab when I used to be in Speaker's Call, I've watched a lot of his videos. One of his tactics, because I pay attention to the tactics. I've heard many of the arguments before, but I listen to what do people say and how do they respond in a conversation. And if you pay close attention with Hijab, one of his favorite tactics is a red herring. In other words, you're having a conversation, he will bring up a side point or an irrelevant point or a trivial point, and then labor that point to move away from the main point. And that's what I don't see any good value in this, other than to have the gullible, viewers listening go, wow, he's saying something substantial, when in fact he's saying something trivial and he's laboring a trivial point.
Like, you're getting it a bit confused. Let me give you an example, right? If you go to Britannica right now, yeah. Well, come on, let's have a conversation. We're using sources to kind of allow the water to go through the pipes, yeah. Otherwise, it's just going to be like a semantic game. If we're saying, if we go to Britannica Encyclopedia and you write the word reason down, yeah, which is a respected encyclopedia, it's gonna
try rational. I didn't give you the definition for reason. But like I gave you the definition for rational. So stop waffling, please.
But listen, rationality is that which pertains to reason.
No, I didn't say that.
No, that's what the dictionary says.
No, it's not. Right. Now show me a dictionary that says that.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, let's see if there's anything more that happens, because this backwards and forwards really was a trivial thing. This is what
I'm telling him now. This is exactly what because now I've had it. Now I'm telling him straight out what he's doing. To get your definition, and now we discuss your definition.
No, that's okay. Give me a definition.
The question is atheism rational? I've showed yes, I know, it is. What and what you're doing now is you're saying, I want to talk about reason.
No, but we need to kind of get this right, if you don't mind, because if our whole question is atheism rational, yeah, and I'm giving you definitions both from encyclopedic sources and dictionary sources of what the word means in the English language, and you're rejecting it, so I don't know how to continue unless you want me to switch language. Am I speaking your
language?
phone?
I'm fine with doing that, but the point is, it doesn't make
am I
sense
speaking
to
your
now
phone?
speak about reason only. You look.
No,
you've got an agenda.
what's your name again?
Okay, you have
What's your
something
name again?
about reason, and you want to go to the reason.
Spamming.
No, man. Look, sorry. If you go into the dictionary, we're speaking in English language. Rationality is that which pertains to reason. That's what it means. So we need to know what reason is to know what rationality is.
Rob,
You're
stop
stopping us. You're sorry, but you're stopping this conversation from progressing, because what you want to do is you don't want us to tell you that actually, in order for you to to use reason and rationality, then you have to allow for whatever it is the subject of information that you're, or subject of investigation, to allow for a logical inference. Now, my question is, if logical inference and reason are connected with each other, okay? If reason entails logical inference, how does atheism allow us to make any kind of logical inference?
It doesn't.
That's a fair.
His view is, and he's not saying this, right, but he's saying it indirectly. So his view is that if you do not start with God, who gave you logical faculties or rational faculties, then you're not in a position to, as an atheist, or any atheist, is his claim, although he'd have to demonstrate that, right? He's not making the argument for it. He hasn't provided the argument for it. Tzortzis tried to do a version of it, but he's not doing that. But essentially what he's saying is, if we reverse it so that for you to kind of see the other perspective, I guess, is he's saying that, hey, if you don't believe in God, then you are not justified in invoking rationality or using reason, because you as an atheist don't have a basis for claiming that those things are, he's not using these words, but I'm saying it for him, reliable or work. And you are saying, and what you, as I understand it, what your view is, hey, atheism is simply the assertion about a single claim, but there are certain entailments. There are certain things that entail from that. One is that there's no God, right? That we all have to agree on. If you're an atheist, we do not believe in a God. And if we don't believe in a God, what they are saying is, okay, then you have to give a justification for rationality and the ability to use reason, which there are naturalistic and other arguments for, right? But you are understanding him to say, okay, well, hey, atheism, or you're taking the view that atheism is the single position on a single claim, and that's got nothing to do with rationality. But I think, and this wasn't made clear between the two of you, is that, okay, so atheism entails not having a God belief. His view is that you can only have rationality. It can only be justified or explained or accounted for by a God. You, Mr. Atheist, have to account for it some other way. You either can't do that, or how do you do that? And that's where I think the two of you were missing each other.
Doesn't.
Okay, so it's not rational then, is it?
What? You are going from me asking a.
What do you mean what? You just said it yourself. It doesn't. So wait, hold on. What's what about that? I think you're basically, what you're doing is acting. I can see the performance in what you're doing, yeah, because I'm an actor myself, as the people know.
I know.
This is all rhetoric.
And you know what?
We all know that.
I'm a performer. You know, I'm not going to give me a bath.
I mean, this is all just rhetoric. And yes, he is a performer. And, you know, we've said this all along. Nobody really takes hijab seriously. I mean, you could have a conversation with Hamza, for example. But, you know, nobody really takes, nobody apart from some of the gullible Muslims takes hijab seriously. There's a lot of rhetoric and very little substance there. And he's admitting himself. He's also claiming you're doing the same thing. But this is just waffle at the moment. So let's just see if there's anything left here before we get to the end.
BAFTA soon, yeah, but before they give me the BAFTA, and before they give me the Oscar, and before they put me on the shows, and the Channel 4 actually got in contact with me, I should tell you that, you know, and they tried to. But before that happens, let me tell you something. Yeah? Right now, you just admitted, with all due respect, you said that it doesn't. Yeah, that's what you just said. It doesn't give you any logical possibility for inference. So, by extension, therefore, what has atheism got to do with rationality? What has it got to do with it? You're saying is atheism rational? You're saying it is. That's okay. So prove it.
I think hijab. Sorry, just to give Hijab, I think what he's saying is
Homo sapiens, we need to get him on. So let's
Subboor,
wrap this up.
Subboor, can I ask something quickly?
Everyone wants
Just a quick question. I've just got a question for him.
Allow him to finish. With all due respect, if you're saying is atheism rational, and your answer is yes, that's a claim. Sorry, you want to call it whatever you want to call it. Is atheism? So your claim is atheism is rational. Rational is that which pertains to reason. Reason is that which allows for logical inference. My question is, how does atheism allow for any kind of logical inference? You have to answer that. It's your claim.
Can I make a point of clarity here, Hijab? Yeah, well, I think what Stopspamming is saying is that the rejection of the theist claim is a rational rejection, but that doesn't now follow that atheism now can give you now explanatory scope and power of all the other things in our lives and what makes us human. So there is
he gets it. That's exactly the point. Hamza gets it. He understands it, and he even translates it for Hijab, but Hijab doesn't want this. This is not on his scope at the moment. He wants to lower the confidence in atheists, and he doesn't even care if his own panel member tells him, "Listen, you fool, you don't get it."
there's such a difference, Habibi. So I think
No, I don't buy that. I don't buy this nonsense. All that's happening now is that if you're going to make the claim that atheism is rational, you're going to have to justify that claim with all due respect. If that's your claim, atheism is rational. Rational is that which pertains to reason. Reason is that which pertains to logical inference. Therefore, you need to tell me how atheism is connected to logical inference in any way, shape, or form, in an explanatory sense or a refutational sense. If you can't do that, then you can't claim that atheism is rational.
Or, just to make it a bit more specific, or what they'll have to do is to show why their rejection is rational, or why they don't.
That's reputational, right? So if they have reputational scope, then that's fine. But right now, there's nothing being provided. By the way, the analogy of the box with the dragon.
Is a false.
I mean, and then I reject 360 gods and so on. This is an embarrassing. Sorry, with all due respect, analogy. He asked the question. He said, "What's in the box?" Yeah, we're just asking what's in the box. But a question is different to a claim. The claim that's being made here today is that atheism is rational. You can't conflate a question which is interrogative with a claim which is declarative. Yeah, these are simple linguistic propositions. If you say if you're saying that there isn't an X in the box, that's a claim. If you're saying X is...
No, he's not saying that, though. He's misrepresenting, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's bringing a box to you and they're saying something's in there. You're saying, hey, I don't believe that. I don't have any evidence for that. Whatever the claim is that's in the box, I don't know what that is. And if you're making an extraordinary or a supernatural claim as opposed to a mundane, if they said, hey, I've got a rock in the box, well, you could say, sure, I mean, that's possible. The likelihood of there being a rock in the box as opposed to God or in the analogy, the dragon, what's the chances of it being a rock as opposed to a dragon? Massively more probable that it's a rock than a dragon, right? Why? Because a rock is a mundane thing. A dragon is an extraordinary thing. We've never seen them. We don't have good evidence for them. And the whole evidence thing here is they think the evidence is overwhelming. We don't. But the point is that there is a mundane versus an extraordinary claim. And so it's not as easy as just saying, well, whatever's in the box there, you're just rejecting. You're not rejecting, you're saying, giving me evidence for that, because you, Mr. Whoever brings me the box, is telling me there's something extraordinary in this box. You haven't opened the box. You haven't given me good reasons to believe it. Therefore, I am justified in rejecting it. And I agree with that. I'm not agnostic about something like that. Somebody brings me a box, says there's a mini invisible dragon. I'm rejecting that claim until and if there's good reasons to believe it. I'm not going, I don't know. I think I'm justified in saying an extraordinary claim I'm not being agnostic on. You haven't given me good reasons and evidence. I'm rejecting the claim. That does not mean I say it is impossible there's a dragon. It just means that I do not believe the claim. I reject the claim. I disbelieve your claim. That's it.
But the thing is, I'm not even sure whether Hijab is just being like plain obtuse here, or whether he is intentionally misunderstanding this or pretending like he doesn't understand this. Because
I'm not sure that he does.
How
I think
can you do that?
I think Hamza does, but I don't think he does. I think or at least he's misunderstanding your point or whatever, because I think he's certainly misrepresented it there. It's not like you're saying that there's nothing in the box or whatever the case is. You're just disbelieving the claim that somebody else brought you a box with something extraordinary inside there. That's
Exactly. So why
It's not
doesn't
in the
he
box.
understand that? Or is he deliberately not understanding it? This is the question.
I used
Is he
to
just
think
being
it's-
dishonest, or is he being stupid?
Yeah, I'm leaning towards the view that he doesn't have a good understanding of some of these concepts, especially in a live discussion. So that's my personal view.
Not a good understanding of is the same as my stupid. This is the difference between you and me.
The
You're
box,
so
that's-
fucking polite.
Right, let's see if we can finish up here. I don't know how much longer it is. I don't think it's too long.
Claim. Yeah. Now, if you say, for example, the dragon's not in the box, that's a claim. But is that a falsifiable claim? No, you can actually try and
Okay, you never said the dragon wasn't in the box. You said,
No.
I don't believe, or words to the effect of, or your inference
Yeah.
was, I do not believe the claim that there is a dragon in the box.
He doesn't
But
understand.
that's not
what
the
an
same as
atheist
saying there
is.
is no dragon in the box. This is, if you stop and think about this for a minute, this is not difficult to grasp, right? But he's not the only one. I've spoken to other Muslims like this as well, who don't grasp this. If you say I disbelieve the claim, that does not mean you're saying that it's the case that there's no dragon. You are saying I do not believe there is a dragon.
try and falsify that. You can try and falsify that through the fact that there isn't a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the box. You can deny the or a dragon. You can try and falsify that. But
we need
by
to-
you falsifying it, you have refutational power. But in
Sure.
this case, our question is now, with God, the explanation, the necessary being the independent one, yeah, how can you refute that? Because you've heard all the arguments before, so you need to show us how you're going to refute them.
Yeah.
Instead of telling us about box, which is-
We need to give Stop Spamming a chance to respond, and then I'm going to move on to Homo sapiens or Homo sap or whatever it is, and you can respond to whatever he says, or if you don't want to, it's fine.
Okay. And like I said, we're very open to have any kind of discussion on this on our show where we have more time. Now, the point that I'm making all the time now, the answer to the question, is atheism rational? The answer is yes, 100% and totally. If now somebody goes and says, yeah, but hang on, if rational, then this also can mean this and can mean this, and then a roundabout way, suddenly this is made into a different claim. This is not the way that it works. And thank you, Hamza, for the I don't know, do I call it interpretation or translation or whatever? That is exactly the point. I am not allowing this to go into a claim that I am making. If you want to show me that this is irrational, cool, you can do it, but you can't. You can never show that it is irrational to go and find and ask a question, is this
but I
really
haven't made the
true?
claim that it's irrational. And hold on, sorry. You said that atheism is rational. That's your claim. I haven't said
That is my
atheism
claim, and I said,
irrational.
if you want to show that it's irrational, go ahead, be my guest. You
No,
can't.
no. It's not. I'm not saying that. You said atheism is rational. That's a claim. Can you prove it, please?
Yes, it is very rational. It is
How?
logical and sensible to
Why?
ask somebody what is actually happening, to ask for evidence before accepting something without evidence.
That's not. You're not getting this question. Atheism is a lack
No,
of
I'm
belief
not.
in God. No. If atheism is defined as a lack of belief in a deity or God,
No, it's
now
not.
that's a problem.
I just
So how do
told
you
you,
find
I'm
it? That's a
without a
definition.
God belief.
Yeah, this is where you guys sort of talk past each other. And this is where I think definitely if we can tweak the language there so you're both talking the same thing. When you say without a God belief, he translates that. And I would too, if I didn't know you, to the view that you lack a belief in God. Now, if you don't believe a God exists, which is my position, then that's fine. But I think when you say without a God belief, that's not easy even for other people. Forget about hijab. To understand. So it's like, how do you better phrase that so that other people can understand you? Because you know what you mean, but I think it's using common language that other people can understand as well. Otherwise, this will always be a back and forth where people talk past each other.
It's not a lack.
Ha-
I'm not.
Sorry. What is it?
I am not lacking anything. It is not a lack of a belief. It is I am
So,
a
okay, so
person without a God
what-
belief.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Without means lacking in.
Okay,
No,
Homo
it's not.
sapiens is waiting.
Okay, we'll leave it there. I think the summary is that I don't think this format worked very well. There's too many of them there.
Yeah.
And I think if it's the same people next time, it's a case of selecting somebody or asking, can you speak to, or whoever, you know, it's a lesson for all of us. Can I speak to Hamza on this point? Is that, can I have a conversation with Hamza, or can I have a conversation with Imran, or whatever the case is? I think that would have been good.